A happy December 1st to all of you here at Central Georgia. Hope you had a restful and a very safe Thanksgiving holiday, but December 1st marks the beginning of many new things. Not only the beginning of the last month of the year, not only the start of that work week after the Thanksgiving holiday, but it also is the beginning of meteorological winter. Not the actual beginning of winter, but this is beginning to be the time of year where we start to see some of those cooler temperatures in the forecast. We have plenty of those on your 7-day forecast. And along with that, December 1st is going to be a day that is going to mark the beginning of a pretty dreary period here in Central Georgia, something we have not been talking about as of recently. So we do have a weather impact alert. First and foremost, that's going to be for tonight into tomorrow morning. 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. is the 12-hour window that I'm giving it. The rain is going to be most widespread across all areas of Central Georgia. So whether you live over to the west in Upson and Taylor County, over to the east in Johnson County, as far south as Cordele, areas in Wilcox County, or as far north as Putnam and Jasper counties, everyone is looking to receive some form of steady and some heavy rainfall in some pockets. So that's obviously something we haven't talked about in quite some time. So what you're going to need to do is stay updated with us here on the weather team throughout this afternoon into the evening hours, and of course, take a look at that radar and tune into our morning show tomorrow before you make that morning commute, because that's the main reasoning for this weather impact alert. We want you to exercise caution on the roads tomorrow morning and plan on a longer commute as compared to usual. So you just came off the Thanksgiving holiday. I know you're already feeling sluggish. You still got that tryptophan from the turkey making you a bit sleepy and causing you to doze off. The last thing that you want to do is set that morning alarm for about 10 to 15 minutes earlier than you usually would, but I promise you it will be worth your while, as you will probably run into some complications on that morning commute out to work and out to school tomorrow. But first things first, we did wrap up our 11th month of the year. That was November, and we did finally record some rainfall 4 days towards the back half of the month. However, they didn't amount to much. In total, we saw less than 1/10 of an inch of rain at Middle Georgia Regional Airport in the entire month of November, so 0.07 inches to be exact. On average, we typically see just over 3 inches of rain. I have been showing you that we typically see around 2 3/4 of an inch. All in all, we're still well below average, despite whatever number that is. And the record set back in 1992 of over 10 inches of rain. So with that steady decline, it has been back to back months where we have been below average in terms of our rainfall. That is September, October, and November, following up a very wet month of August. So the numbers as of November 30th, all of these red boxes are beginning to overtake what we see in the green boxes. Those months we were above average for your precipitation, and now we are hovering over a ½ inch of rain below average, below where we should be at this point in the calendar year, transitioning into the beginning of the month of December. However, we do have some relief in store as soon as the nighttime hours tonight. So welcome to dreary December. We have plenty of rain chances on your 7-day forecast to break down. Widespread rain coming in tonight, and it will be chilly all week long and into the weekend. So those periods where you do see some rain, you're going to want some layering underneath the raincoat, because it is going to be a story of temperatures that don't get out of the 40s and the 50s all throughout the work week. So cloudy skies have been the dominating force with your forecast so far this Monday morning, and really just holding on to the conditions that we wrapped up the weekend with yesterday. Not a single peak of sunshine across Dublin, downtown Macon, and down in Houston County, Warner Robins, and the Georgia National Fairgrounds. Also a very gloomy atmosphere. So temperature-wise, we haven't warmed up too much from what your morning lows stood at. Somewhere in the upper 40s, even the mid 40s over in Thomaston and in Butler. But as you make your way over to the east and the southeast, it's more so a story of the lower 50s. But 54 degrees is our warmest temperature that can be found in Vidalia and down in Rochelle. Let's see how that matches up against the eastern United States. And this tells the story. It is a very cold atmosphere all across the United States. Many areas that are still well below freezing temperature, 24 in St. Louis, 22 in Kansas City, 27 up in Indianapolis. Steadily getting warmer as you go down into the deep south, but it's not until you transition into this green color that you start to feel some numbers above the 50-degree mark. Pretty warm down in Jacksonville, sitting at 65 degrees, and 75 degrees all the way down in Orlando. That makes sense. Most of the fronts that come through this time of year don't make their way all the way through the southern peninsula of Florida. But nonetheless, it is cold all over the place. And that is telling the story that it could always be a little bit worse. We could have temperatures around freezing temperature like Nashville, or 31 degrees up in Lexington, or we could be in the 20s like they are sitting at in the central Great Plains. Dew point temperatures, little to no humidity in the forecast. It continues to be very dry, and this comes as a result of a frontal boundary that did pass through yesterday. But what that frontal boundary has done, it's given us a bit of a wedge setup. So when we talk about the wedge, we have these winds coming out of the north and the northeast, and that's propelling any cooler and drier air from northeastern areas down along the Appalachian Mountains. And the Appalachian Mountains kind of act as a blocking mechanism, kind of like the bank of a river. It's guiding all of those winds and cooler air down into central Georgia. So typically when we have this wedge set up, we do have areas to the north and the northeast that are a little bit cooler than the rest of the bunch. However, we have something else happening, so that's why we're not getting as much of an indication of that wedge as, say, we did yesterday afternoon. And the winds right now, still a bit breezy, anywhere up to around 8 to 12 miles per hour in a select few areas, and at their lowest, about a 5-mile-per-hour breeze down in Warner Robins. But these yellow shades are going to indicate the potential for seeing some wind gusts up to 20 miles per hour throughout today. That, combined with some of the chilly temperatures, it's going to make for a forecast that you'll want to make sure that you bundle up for. So yesterday's numbers, they were pretty on par for where we should be this time of year, exactly at our average morning low of 40 degrees as we started out yesterday morning. But your afternoon high temperature still fell just a couple degrees below average of 65 degrees this time of year. Your record set back in 1970, 82 degrees, and then 20 degrees was the record low set back in 1929. So yesterday was one of those days we recorded some rainfall, but it didn't do much. Only about 2/100ths of an inch. Your departure of rain went down above and a ½ inch of rain below where we should be. So we got the flip in this year departure of rain as of last week. That positive turned into a negative. So we're going to need some pretty substantial rainfall amounts in order to get back above where we should be at this point in the calendar year. That's been our one point in pride so far. We have not had much rain whatsoever over the last couple of months, but it has been okay because we got a very wet month of August. That year departure of rain was nearly 7 inches above average at the end of August. But over the course of those 3 months that have been very, very dry, September, October, and November, we have seen that number go down into the negative range. Sunrise yesterday was at 7:18, sunset 5:28. In fact, today is an important day because it will be our earliest sunset that we do see. It's going to be at 5:27 later on this evening, and this is going to mark a good stretch of days where the sun is going to set at 5:27. After that, it will bump back up to 5:28 just like it was yesterday, and that's going to take about a week or so to happen. Beginning of next week, that sunset will continue to get later and later and later. However, as your sunset time kind of hits a stalemate and kind of hits the bottom end of that range, so the bottom of the valley, that sunrise time is going to continue to get later and later. So your hours of daylight will continue to decrease day by day as we head all the way until December 21st, so 20 days away from the shortest day of the calendar year in terms of hours of daylight. So 57, that's going to be your high temperature today. Your temperatures are already sitting in the low 50s, giving you an idea about how much influence this dense cloud cover is going to have on your temperatures throughout today. So obviously when you have the clouds present overnight, it leads to warmer morning low temperature values. And that's what we saw. We started out somewhere scattered about the 40s this morning. However, it's not going to lead into too much of a warm up. You're blocking all that sunshine that could start to warm the surface if we did have some breaks in the cloud cover. So no sunshine whatsoever, a cloudy and a mostly dry day. I've had to edit my language on this a little bit throughout the past couple of hours because we've gotten different runs of Future View in. Typically we get a run early in the morning before the morning show, and then the next one comes out around 10 to 10:30 in the morning just before the stream starts. But we actually got an updated run sometime around the 8 a.m. hour, and it did show maybe a few light showers are going to get going a bit earlier than we were thinking as of early this morning. So rain going to begin to move in tonight, going to pair up some chilly temperatures that are around 8 degrees below average this time of year with a breeze out of the east maybe around 5 to 10 miles per hour sustained, but some gusts could also get up to around 20 miles per hour in a select few spots throughout today. But going off your temperatures, 57 degrees. That's not going to be the high temperature for everyone. If you live farther up to the north and the northwest, your temperature may be somewhere around the low 50s and then transitioning into the mid 50s. Farther south that you live, you could actually start to flirt with the 60-degree mark, but that's still going to be below average all across the area. No one is going to make it up to that number of 65 degrees throughout this afternoon. So your meteogram peaks around 55 or 56 degrees this afternoon, and then as we transition into 5 o'clock, your numbers begin the steady cool down. But as long as we keep that cloud cover in the forecast, your temperatures aren't going to cool down majorly overnight tonight. We're still going to walk out to some 40s very likely tomorrow morning, but that will be paired up with some widespread rain. So let's go ahead and take a look at your satellite and radar picture. Like I mentioned, no peaks in sunshine, no gaps in the cloud cover whatsoever. But at least we are dodging the rain. We did have some light showers in the forecast, mainly to the north of us, but we did see some of those transition and start to move down into central Georgia. There are some showers around the Tallahassee area, getting down into the panhandle of Florida, some rain back over to the west and southern Mississippi. This is all going to be the outer edges of a low pressure system that is trying to form along this stationary boundary down in the northern Gulf. As that low pressure center does form, it is going to create a big blob of moisture essentially, and that's going to transition up across the southeastern United States. But right now we had the passage of our front yesterday. Now it's making its way down into southern portions of Florida, but still not necessarily ushering in that cooler and drier air just yet. But we have seen the front move from northwest down to southeast. So that's where we are seeing the cooler temperatures present right now. And it is kind of eroding those areas to the north and the northeast that we're seeing cooler temperatures courtesy of the high pressure just to the north of us that's funneling in that wedge setup, that cooler and drier air down along the Appalachian Mountains. But all in all, we have two forces that are giving us some cooler air up to the north. That's the main thing that you need to know throughout the rest of today. So Future View shows that rain showers could start to creep into our southernmost counties as early as 3 p.m. Now, I'm not necessarily dead set on the fact that light showers are already going to be present in our southernmost counties right there in the middle of the afternoon. We'll continue to play it by ear, but I do think that you should plan on this evening into tonight. That's when the more widespread rain does start to build into the picture. Still starting out as mainly a big blob of light and maybe even some steady rain. But then as we transition into the nighttime hours, 10 p.m., remember what I was talking about with that weather impact alert. 10 p.m. tonight all the way to 10 a.m. tomorrow. This is the picture at 10 p.m. tonight. So widespread rain. This is when most areas, almost everyone in central Georgia is going to be impacted. Yes, it's going to move into areas down to the south and the southwest a little bit earlier. But if you live, say, up in Hancock County, Washington County, and Baldwin County, it's still going to take a little bit of time for that rain to reach you. So that's why I think 10 p.m. is really going to be the start of this widespread rain. The farther southwest that you live, you may want to make plans for an earlier dinner if you do have any of those plans tonight. You know, just trying to get a good meal and get your body going, get it some fuel after you just had a bunch of good food for the Thanksgiving holiday. So that's where you are going to run into some rain that could impact you on your way back home from maybe going out to eat, or if you have to stay at the office a little bit later this Monday evening. Then we go overnight into early tomorrow morning. That's where your yellows and your orange colors start to build in more widespread. Of course, the oranges are mainly just present in some pockets. It does look like mainly a story of some yellow, but the farther over to the right of the scale that you see at the top, that's going to mean heavier rainfall. So that is going to result in some higher rainfall totals, maybe getting upwards to an inch or two of rain, but it will be widespread. So I do expect everyone to see something in the form of steady and some pockets of some heavy rain throughout those overnight hours. Still into tomorrow morning, but we can start to see some signs of these rain chances tapering off. This is still a messy image to head out the door to around 6 a.m. And now the latest run of Future View has this rain trying to move out as early as around 8 to 9 a.m. So we could see a bit of an earlier exit if we are to get an earlier entrance to this rain a little bit into the afternoon and evening hours later on today. But then you transition into around the time that you're going into the office, going into school, and going into work. The big cluster of rain has moved out of here by about 10 a.m. tomorrow, and then we are left with some residual cloud cover on the backside of this low pressure system. But as we transition into Tuesday afternoon, the rest of it, we'll steadily see that cloud cover break apart, and that's going to be a story of some partly cloudy skies. Rain chances are out of here, and the more sunshine that we get towards the tail end of the day should result in more evaporation of water. So that means a lot of the puddles and a lot of those slick roads are going to start to dry up a little bit quicker if you can get some peaks of sunshine closer to sunset tomorrow. Then we go into Wednesday morning. Looks like we got a good cluster of cloud cover, mainly over to the east, so that may be blocking our sunrise just a tad bit tomorrow morning. Nonetheless, it should be pretty short-lived. How about this for Wednesday afternoon, 5 p.m. as you're rounding out the third day of the work week that you are having once you get back from this Thanksgiving holiday. I know many of you are going to really hope that this work week goes by very quickly, and not to worry, you only have about 3 more weeks until you start to get into the Christmas holiday time frame. But 5 p.m., mostly clear skies, maybe some passing cloud cover that tries to hang around for the picture into Thursday morning, but I do expect a dry stretch to ensue for the second half of Tuesday into all of Wednesday and into most of Thursday before we could see a few spotty showers and a few sprinkles try to pop up in the forecast for your Thursday. So here's a look at the rainfall graphic. It has remained pretty consistent of the idea that everyone in central Georgia is going to get within that 1 to 2 inch range of rainfall. So some isolated areas are obviously going to have some heavier totals, especially if you get heavy shower after heavy shower that kind of trains over the same area. Highest total that we see is for Scythe up there in Monroe County. Don't get locked into these exact totals. Just know that your rainfall total should be within about an inch at the very least, or maybe around 2 inches at the very most. And some isolated areas could get up to around 3 to maybe even 3.5 inches of rain. And that could result maybe a little bit of the ponding of some water, some isolated flash flooding, if you even want to call it that. We don't have much of a flood risk with this. This is just going to be mainly a widespread rainmaker that impacts your morning commute into tomorrow morning. So your drought monitor. We did get an update to this on Thanksgiving morning. So obviously many of you probably tuned out of the weather like myself on the Thanksgiving holiday and didn't worry about anything, but this was the latest update last Thursday. We saw the expansion of a severe drought. So now areas like Macon, Warner Robins, Perry, areas of Twiggs, Bleckley County down in Cochran, over to Roberta and Crawford County. Anyone in this orange shade is now under a severe drought, where we still have areas of a moderate drought up here to the north and the northeast. This does make sense because a couple weeks ago in time, we actually had a severe thunderstorm warning that rolled through these counties. So they got a bit more rainfall than, say, the rest of the bunch down to the south. And we also see this red color. So that is going to indicate an extreme drought. So that's one category below the worst level of drought conditions that you can get, which are actually present down there in southwest Georgia along the Georgia-Florida state line. But this extreme drought is stretching into areas of Chris County now. Along with that, areas over to the west of Chris County, so Sumter County, and I do believe Sly County is just a little bit to the north, so they fall in the severe drought category. Nonetheless, everyone needs some rain, and that's what this drought monitor has showed us for the past 2 to 3 months in time. And this data was taken as of November 25th, so that was last Tuesday, 2 days before Thanksgiving when we got the release of it. So all the rainfall that we've gotten since then and all the way up until the end of tomorrow will be taken into account with this week's drought monitor. So what that means is I do anticipate some improvement and some alleviation of some of these drought conditions given the rainfall totals I did just show you with this widespread rainmaker on its way tonight and into tomorrow morning. So hopefully we can at least get everyone back to the moderate drought category, maybe even get some areas back into abnormally dry conditions. But the good news on that end is also this isn't our only rainmaker to talk about throughout the rest of this week. As we head into the weekend, we actually have another widespread rainmaker that looks to be in store. I don't think it's going to be as impressive in terms of rainfall totals compared to the system moving in tonight into tomorrow morning. However, it does look like we do have some pretty promising totals when we add up the rainfall over the next 24 hours and the rainfall that could be ahead into the weekend. So now let's take a look at your winds. I did mention it's going to be a bit of a breezy afternoon, continuing all the way into this evening, maybe a 19 mile per hour gust in some select areas. not the breeziest day that we've had over recent weeks or recent months. Tomorrow, also going to be a windy day on the backside of this low pressure system. Some gusts up to 20, maybe even 25 miles per hour possible within those pretty widespread yellow areas. But Wednesday is just looking like the best day if you want to have any outdoor plans, have an outdoor lunch. It is still going to be on the chillier side, but no winds and plenty of sunshine should be present as we transition into the midway point of the work week. So over the next 3 days, the main thing you need to know is this red box right here. So going to go for this last little sliver of Monday into most of the morning hours on Tuesday as we transition closer to, say, around the midday hour. That weather impact alert will be gone. I'm giving it until around 10 a.m. when those rain chances get out of the picture. And then let's take a look at the numbers. So obviously chilly today, 57 for a high temperature is what I mentioned, down to 42 tomorrow morning. So we will still see some cooler temperatures. Temperatures scattered about the 40s, paired up with a very dreary and gloomy atmosphere. It is going to be a good forecast to maybe wear a hoodie underneath your rain jacket as you walk outside tomorrow. It's still not getting too warm, even though we do see some sunshine tomorrow afternoon. Just realized I forgot to edit these icons on here. Obviously not going to be completely sunny for all of Tuesday. Going to be partly cloudy past lunchtime, but before lunchtime, it will be mostly cloudy to entirely cloudy and paired up with pretty substantial rain. But 60 degrees for a high temperature, maybe feeling a tad bit better than today. And then as we get the clearing in the cloud cover, take a look at what happens. Back down into the upper 20s for lows on Wednesday morning. So Wednesday morning should be the coldest time frame that we have across your 7-day forecast. And Wednesday afternoon, even though we'll have mostly sunny skies, even though the breeze will have subsided, high temperatures still in the neighborhood of around 10 degrees below average. So a chilly forecast ringing in the beginning of the month of December with some very appropriate feeling weather. So morning low temperatures, they go down to 28 and still really cold on Thursday morning near the freezing temperature mark, but then we'll start to get a steady increase in the cloud cover as we head into the beginning of the weekend. So 40 degrees for a morning low on Friday, right on average with where our numbers should be to start out the morning. And your afternoon high temperatures each and every day, mid to upper 50s, maybe close to that 60-degree mark. But the main message is each day throughout the work week is going to be below average of 65 degrees this time of year. So some chilly temperatures after we just went through a stretch before Thanksgiving of nearly 2 weeks with above average temperatures. I think in that span, we probably broke about 5 to maybe even 6 record high temperatures. So finally getting back on to the schedule of where we should be this time of year, and very appropriately so with the start of meteorological winter being today. But let's talk about the humidity. It's not going to be a big influx in humidity between today and tomorrow, but we are going to see sufficient moisture, sufficient enough to continue to sprout all those widespread rain chances. And this is mainly going to be at the surface. We may see moisture higher up into the atmosphere that is associated with this low pressure system, but there's going to be so much moisture in the higher levels of the atmosphere that will continue to fall down. So of course, this may be not giving us the best indication of when our best rain chances are, but a little bit of one. We see the moisture go up in between today and tomorrow, then it drops back down. But then going into the weekend, it still looks like we have no humidity whatsoever to work with Friday, Saturday, and into Sunday. Well, as a matter of fact, your rain chances as we head into the weekend are also going to be associated with another Gulf low pressure system. So that going to form down to the south and southwest of us, may try to send us some showers as we go into the second half of your Thursday, but I do believe most of those rain chances hold off until we get sometime into the midway point of Friday. So this is Friday afternoon, right around lunchtime. Rain chances begin to move in. Pretty good agreement, overlap between the green and the blue. That's something we always look for. So Friday night could be a bit messy. And then I'm sure a lot of you are probably wondering about Saturday, because Saturday is going to be a big day between the Warner Robins Christmas Parade and the Mercer Bears. They're going to be hosting the second round of the FCS playoffs against South Dakota. So that is going to be a big game at 5 Star Stadium. I definitely don't want any rain in the forecast for it, but this is 8 a.m. So maybe a few showers that are still in the forecast that could impact the Christmas parade. However, as we transition into the afternoon, I do think that the most widespread rain starts to get out of the picture. We just maybe still have a few spotty sprinkles, maybe a mostly cloudy atmosphere. And then right now, as we transition into Sunday, you can see there's still plenty of widespread rain to the south of us, maybe to the north of us. This is just one model picking up on it, however. This is just the GFS model in green. So is this going to happen? Still kind of anyone's best guess. We're still really trying to fine tune the timing of those rain chances into the beginning of the weekend. But I do believe most of the day on Friday is going to be a pretty dreary one. And I think for the first half of Saturday, we could hold on to a couple of scattered showers, but I don't think it's going to be a complete washout for Saturday plans, and especially as you go into the afternoon for that Mercer football game. And now we wrap up the weekend, partly cloudy skies, maybe some rain chances that try to get close to us, but you just see kind of a couple of green speckles. So like you're dipping a paintbrush in that green can of paint and you're just flicking the tip of that paintbrush all over the southeast. That's what the rain chances look like as we go into Monday, but it's only what one model run does say. We're not going to have anything in the way of those spotty sprinkles if we don't have enough moisture in the forecast. So we'll continue to see how that plays out towards the end of the weekend and into the beginning of next week. But I did mention already with our first rainmaker, we will see some pretty substantial rainfall totals, the most substantial we have seen in about 3 months' time. So maybe some totals above 2 inches according to the GFS model, but then we wrap it in with those rain chances into the weekend. How about totals up to around 3 inches of rain, maybe even some localized totals that are even higher than that. So it does look like maybe another inch of rain could be in store with this next weather maker Friday into Saturday and into Sunday. The European is a little more bullish on it, not necessarily hinting at the widespread totals above 2, maybe even 2.5 inches. But you can see some of these darker shades indicating totals around 3 inches once you start to get in that red color, and it has the main axis of rain down towards the south of us as of right now, but still encompassing Crisp, Wilcox, Dodge, Telfair, Wheeler, southern Lawrence County, and Treutlen counties, all across our southernmost vicinity. So we'll continue to see how this plays out, but all in all, getting widespread totals above the 1 inch mark, no matter where you are in central Georgia. That is finally promising. So like I said, I do expect some alleviation and maybe some improvement in the drought conditions that I did just show you. But also December 1st, it marks our first day of not being in hurricane season for the past 6 months' time. So here are your final numbers of the 2025 hurricane season. We fell 1 named storm below average and 4 below what Colorado State forecasted for us at 17. 5 of which did strengthen into hurricane status, so still well below average and well below what was forecasted. And then we get into our major hurricane status, which is a bit of an outlier compared to the other two. These two numbers are both below average, but we're actually right on par with what was forecasted and 1 major hurricane above what we typically see on average. So depending on how you look at it, in terms of major hurricanes, yes, it was a pretty active hurricane season, but in terms of the frequency of just general named storms out there, it was definitely a below average season. But the most important thing of all, and I think the thing that all of us can get a bit of a sigh of relief for, this is the first time in 10 years that the United States has had 0 landfalling hurricanes. However, we did have 1 tropical storm that made landfall. That was Tropical Storm Chantal. You may remember that back around the 4th of July time frame. Didn't really impact us here in central Georgia, maybe sent us a couple of rain showers, but all in all, we didn't see a storm of hurricane status make landfall in the United States. Other countries down in the Caribbean, of course, they did have to interact with Hurricane Melissa, specifically Cuba, Jamaica, areas of the Bahamas, and then we get back into that time frame where we had Imelda and Umberto, both those side-by-side storms just to the southeast of us over in the western Atlantic. Of course, some of those did impact the island of Bermuda as well. So wrapping it all up into one graphic, this is the one thing I want you to pay attention to. Weather impact alert, 10 p.m. tonight until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning for widespread heavy rainfall, some of the most significant rainfall totals we have seen in nearly 3 months, and obviously very widespread. So everyone going to get some rain from this rainmaker, and it's something you haven't really had to drive through necessarily on your way into work, on your way into school, because most of our rain chances have been overnight and gotten out of here before many of you wake up. So make sure that you have a bit of caution on the roads. Plan for some extra time. Carve out about 10 to 15 extra minutes on that morning commute tomorrow, and of course continue to stay updated with us here on the weather team. So after we get through that weather impact alert, it does look like we enter a dry stretch. We get a little bit colder, especially those morning low temperatures down below freezing or at freezing temperature. Then we welcome back rain chances. I have the most confidence in Friday seeing some rain. Then the rain chances steadily decrease as we head throughout the rest of the weekend. If we need to, and we're starting to see more agreement on most of Saturday, having a lot of widespread rain, then of course we would issue a weather impact alert once again, given how many outdoor activities there will be with the Christmas parade and that Mercer game, but continue to stay updated throughout this week if we are to do so. And then as we go into the beginning of next week, I do see signs of a steady warming trend, maybe getting those numbers back slightly above average, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, but go ahead and get used to the below average numbers because we are now in December. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you at 11 a.m. tomorrow for another look at your extended forecast.